Okay, I think we can start. It's 12:03. Thanks again for joining us during lunchtime. My name is Nicolas Seidler. I'm the Executive Director of the Geneva Science Policy Interface. So welcome again to this webinar about the Impact Collaboration Program, the annual call for projects that we launched recently. Before we start, I just wanted to mention that we are recording this session, but we'll actually only use publicly the portion of our presentation. So we'll not share the Q&A with the audience, only the part that is about the presentation from us. With that, it's great to see you all. So we're going to talk about the ICP today, the Impact Collaboration Program, which is really a flagship activity of the GSPI. It tells a lot about what we're about, what we do, what we believe in, what we can bring in the space. And it's been a program that we actually launched for the third time this year. On the webinar today, beyond myself, as I said before, I'm the Executive Director of the GSPI. There is my colleague, Frédéric Guérin, who's GSPI's Executive Officer. In the context of the ICP, she's really been on the front of supporting collaborations between scientific actors and policy actors on a regular basis. And she will also be presenting more details on the call during this webinar. We also have Maxime Stoffer, which is GSPI's Science Policy Officer, and who, among other functions, is really the architect of the ICP selection process, really focused on setting up a thorough approach before, during, and after the call. So, I'll share my screen now so you can see my presentation. There you go. I hope you can see the slides fine on your end. So what we're going to talk about in the next hour is really first, taking a very brief step back on who is the GSPI and why it is important for us to support science policy engagement activities in the Geneva ecosystem. We'll cover as well what makes science policy collaborations impactful and how to build them at the boundary of science and policy that relates to the ICP itself. We'll have concrete information on how to apply to the ICP and the process around it. And last but not least, we'll have an open segment to answer any of the questions that you may have. So the Geneva Science Policy Interface, we are actually 3 years old. We are an independent collaboration platform that's focused on boundary spanning at the interface of science, policy, and practice. The rationale for our existence, what we're really about, is to create new opportunities for collaborations and interactions between science, policy, and practice actors within the Geneva ecosystem. It's to build and open up networks. It's also to contribute to skills to enable people, again, from academia, but also from international organizations, global NGOs, to be able to interact effectively with one another. The way we do it, our angle of action is really focused on supporting professionals from the science and policy communities to promote collaborative mindsets, practices, and we do that through a set of programs and activities that includes the Impact Collaboration Program that we're going to talk about today. And lastly, in terms of who's behind the GSPI, we are hosted by the University of Geneva, supported by them, as well as by the Swiss Department of Foreign Affairs, along with a set of leading research institutions in Europe, which you can see on the screen below. Now, I mentioned the strong connection of the GSPI with Geneva and what we call the international Geneva ecosystem. And clearly that's a space that's very key both for us and for the Impact Collaboration Program. As you probably know, Geneva is really quite a unique place in the world that concentrates a lot of international organizations, country representations, global NGOs, diplomatic missions, thematic hubs, etc., etc. So it's really a big concentration of a diversity of societal actors that all form a unique ecosystem that is able to address some of the big, wicked, global, complex challenges that we have to face as a global community, including migration and humanitarian crisis, climate change, health, sustainable development, peace and security, and you name it. There is no shortage of complex global issues to address. And in that space, well, when we think about the solutions that we need to develop to those challenges, the role of science is really quite obvious. We really need science to provide reliable evidence, specific knowledge, developing robust methodologies that can really help move the needle around many of the issues that we need to address. And so for us, it's really a key starting point for us and for the ICP that global governance needs science. Again, we have science that's about investigating reality, providing new insights on the one hand, policy, which is a much more social process that's about mobilizing people around collective action. And both are quite different, and we'll get to that, and it's fine. But at some point, we also need those worlds to align and to connect to be able to produce science-informed policies and solutions. And so just as I mentioned, well, it's not a straightforward thing to connect science and policy. I'm not going to get into details of misfits, but you probably know that science and policy actors develop different professional cultures, different languages. They produce or they need different formats. So there's really a range of challenges and misfits that often need to be overtaken to be able to get to effective collaborations. And those science policy relationships can really benefit from help in terms of networks and relationships, alignment of purpose, providing time to collaborate, to engage, resources to do that, as well as to provide skills and methods to interact with one another in an effective way. And all those elements are really actually what the Impact Collaboration Program is about. It's really a program that's about creating a signal that these are important issues, and it's a program that actually brings resources to do that. And so the ICP is a program that is, as we said, about supporting impactful science policy collaborative projects that are about generating impact and building the field of science policy engagement. So it's really both a call that we see as a way to create direct impact from the project themselves, but also more broadly speaking, creating benefits in terms of learning and sharing that learning more broadly. And all of that related to the Geneva ecosystem. And so with that, I'll stop here for the broader introduction, and I'll hand over to Frédéric, who will take you through much more details on the ICP call. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Nicolas. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. So as Nicolas just said, I'm going to try to provide you with a little bit more details on what the ICP is, on the sorts of project that we target within this instrument, I will give you a few examples of the project that we have funded in the past and explain you how you can apply concretely to the ICP. So the ICP, oops, I'm sorry about that, I realize. All right. So the ICP is a funding instrument, but it's actually three things. First and foremost, the ICP provides seed money, small grants of a maximum of 40,000 Swiss francs to the projects that are selected. These grants are seed money that can be used for any type of costs except hardware. And be aware that we expect applicants to apply with some forms of matching funds, either financial or in kind, to match the grant that we provide. The ICP is also a way for us to provide some tailored support services to help the project holders reach their objective and maximize their impact. We really think ourselves as a partner in your project, and to the extent possible, we mobilize our resources to support you plan and implement your project. These services can be of three main types. First, we can help you with strategic and methodological support. We can engage with you in reviewing your methodological approach and also organize strategic planning exercise. We can also help with connection and engagement. This is sometimes what is difficult, and it's a key to the success of some strategy. And we can also help reach out to key stakeholders and also offer a neutral space to convene meetings and dialogue that can be sometimes difficult to organize on your own. And finally, we also can support you with communication and dissemination activities. We can use our networks and our communication channels to give visibility to your project, to your results, and also provide networking opportunities around your activities. Finally, we also want the ICP to be an opportunity to collect insight and learning on the experiences of the project holders through the science policy engagement strategies. So we provide project holders with a learning framework at the beginning of their projects to encourage reflexivity and facilitate the collection of insights throughout the process. And we really want them to also be able to bring those insights to the broader science policy boundary spanning community. And also we hope that this can benefit future applicants to our program. So what sort of project do we support? The project we promote, we expect them to be policy relevant. And for us, that means that the project needs to address a global policy issue that is of relevance to the agenda of International Geneva. We want the project that are selected in the ICP to be collaborative. That means that the collaboration between a scientific institution and a policy actor needs to be a part of the project impact strategy. We also we expect the project also to be strategic in the sense that they should have a clear pathway to impact and be able to produce actionable outputs for impact. And what we mean by impact is that they should either produce direct policy outcomes, meaning that they can influence or change or improve any aspect of a policy process, or indirect science policy outcomes. And I'll tell a little bit more in a minute about that. So what do we mean by policy relevance and timeliness? Well, this is a very, very simplistic and reductionist representation of what policy is. But by policy relevance, we mean that your project aims to inform or improve any stage of a given policy process. And by policy process, this is what is presented here. Starting from agenda setting, problem framing up to policy formulation, policy design, and then implementation and evaluation of policies. So a project can address any type of issues related to any moment of the policy cycle. Scientific inputs can help with problem framing. Project can also be a way to produce tailored knowledge that can also contribute to different activities related to a policy process at different moments. The project can also be a way to provide methodological guidance, for example, when designing a policy options or when implementing policies. They can also be a way to develop concrete tools, build capacity either among scientists or among policy actors to implement policies, or also contribute to the evaluation and the assessment of the result of a given policy, thereby contributing to potentially improve the results and also contribute to problem framing also as in an interactive way. So just so that, by timeliness will also mean that the project can either leverage existing windows of opportunity or create new ones to yield impact in these processes. And what's important for us is that the project does not organize simple one-way transfer from science to policy, but it organizes a more interactive engagement process, and that both policy actors and scientific actors really work together to design and create these solutions. So in terms of strategic collaborations, concretely, what does that mean? So for us, a collaboration is simply formal or informal relationships between an academic actor, an academic institution, and a policy actor. One thing that is important to know is that academic institutions that can apply to the Impact Collaboration Program can be located anywhere in the world. They don't have to be based in Geneva or in Switzerland. They can really be located anywhere in the world, and we expect applicants to have at least a PhD and to be a researcher in a recognized institution. On the policy side, what we mean by policy actors is people who are working for international organizations or international NGOs, but also diplomatic missions or delegations, and actors that in this institution that are active in activities related to policy formulation or in a field of practice that is relevant to the international policy formulation, such as advocacy institutions or boundary organization. A collaboration can involve more than two actors, but at least one important criteria is that at least one actor is a policy actor based in Geneva. We expect these collaborations to be part of the strategy, and also by being strategic, it means to us that the collaboration, the project is based on a clear problem statement, that partners have been able to frame clearly the problem they want to address, that they have a good understanding of the strategic context of their project, that they have mapped the stakeholders that matter for their objectives, and that they have a strategy to engage with them. Having said that, the project we support are 12 months projects, and we are very well aware that this is a time frame which is very short to have a very meaningful policy impact. So that's something that we are aware of, but this is important for us, that there is a long-term vision, a long-term pathway beyond this 12-month project timeframe. And we also are willing to stay engaged with the project partners beyond the 12 months timeframe, if we can continue support the results, enable them to scale and reach the objective, the long-term objective that the project had for itself. So in terms of impacts, what sort of impact can a project supported by the ICP can have? Those are mostly science policy outcomes, and they can be of 4 different types. And those are generic categories, but a specific type of impact would be an improved knowledge exchange. That means that the project has created opportunities for iterative knowledge exchange or co-learning or co-creation among scientists and policy actors. The project can also have as an impact the empowerment of scientists or policy actors, in the sense that after the project, they feel that they are more capable to engage and more effectively and more deliberately with one another. Another impact can be the creation, the establishment of stronger science policy networks and relationships that can sustain science and policy dialogue around a specific issue over time. And finally, another science policy outcome can be the creation of specific policy windows that can be leveraged to link knowledge production with use in policy making. And obviously, beyond those science policy outcomes, you have direct policy outcomes that I mentioned earlier. And that means that the project has managed to concretely contribute to a policy process. So perhaps to illustrate what those projects are about, 4 examples of past projects that have received our support. The first one is a collaboration between the ETH Zurich and IUCN that was trying to address the issue that marine biodiversity is currently rather neglected in discussions on climate change. And this is because there is a scarcity of data, and that the data does not reach policymakers as it should. And the strategy of these partners were to build on existing data that have been collected by ETH Zurich and its partners, and develop an online tool that enables to visualize the impact of climate change on marine biodiversity. And they've had an engagement strategy with scientists and policymakers to make sure that the tool match the needs of the targeted beneficiaries. Another project is a collaboration between the Geneva Academy of Human Rights and Humanitarian Law and the United Nations High Office of the Human Rights High Commissioner. The issue that this project tries to solve is the fact that the recent fast evolving digital technologies pose increasingly human rights challenges, and that the current regulatory framework are so far not properly equipped to address those. And the strategy, the objective that these partners have is to support a multi-stakeholder policy process that is facilitated by the OHCHR to provide tailored expertise based on different disciplines to inform the design of appropriate measure for states to design policy responses and regulatory framework to better address those human rights challenges without jeopardizing the potential of those technologies. Another project is a collaboration between the ETH Zurich again and the Secretariat of the Basel, Rotterdam and Stockholm Conventions. The problem they try to address is that the multilateral environment agreement that these conventions represent, that work to address issues related to the management of chemicals and waste, are in need of the provision of scientific evidence and scientific information. And currently, the science to policy mechanism is not properly effective, because there is a need to track those needs as they occur in the different processes behind these conventions, and to signal those needs to the scientific community. So these partners are building an online tracker that will inform on the scientific needs and distill these needs across the scientific community to facilitate the availability of evidence for the policy actors working in those conventions. And finally, another example is the collaborations between the Graduate Institute of International and Development Studies and the UN Migration Organization, IOM. The problem they try to solve is that currently migration policy officials around the world are not able to access robust, sound data on migration, and given the sensitivity of this policy field, very often policies remain reactive, ad hoc, and security driven. And this collaboration will enable to develop a digital toolkit based on the World Migration Report that is published every year by IOM, that will bring data and information in a tailored way to policy officials so that they can incorporate those data in their daily work more effectively. So this was to illustrate the kind of project that we support. I hope that this gives you a better idea of the approach and the spirit of the project that we want to promote. Now, some very practical information on how you can submit your project. Well, we have opened a few weeks ago an online platform where you can fill in a questionnaire, which is composed of 7 questions and some data about the applicants and your institutions. We've tried to design it so that it is not too heavy a process. So you can submit this application on the platform, which you will find on our website. The submission process closes on the 30th of January 2022. And we announced the selection of the process by the end of March of next year. A quick word on the selection process. The projects, when they are received, are evaluated by the GSPI team. We only review them based on eligibility criteria. And then we convene an independent evaluation committee that reviews the project based on quality criteria. And the criteria are the following. They will look at the importance of the problem addressed. They will look at the way the project is framing the problem and the level of understanding of the strategic context in which it will operate. Then they will review the relevance of the intended outcomes. They will review the quality and relevance of the science policy approach. They will also look at the collaboration setup, and then they will assess whether there is a convincing long-term strategy. So this was the ICP in a nutshell. I hope that it will have given you the information that you were needed. And now I'm happy to open a space for hearing and answering the questions that you might have. Thank you.